Malcolm-Jamal Warner spent his final months keeping a secret from the world. Not a scandal, not a health crisis, a financial promise he made to his wife on paper, one he apparently never fully kept. Now, exactly 1 year after his drowning death in Costa Rica, that secret has landed in a Georgia courtroom, and the person he made it to is going after his own mother to collect. 1 year after the drowning death of Malcolm-Jamal Warner, his widow Tenisha Warner has filed a lawsuit against the actor's mother, who oversees his trust, seeking more than $1.2 million in what she says are owed funds. The suit was filed Monday in DeKalb County Superior Court in Decatur, Georgia, against Pamela Warner, who the legal paperwork names as successor trustee of the Warner Family Trust. The date wasn't a coincidence. Tenisha Warner filed the lawsuit on the first anniversary of his death. To understand why this case landed exactly where it did, it helps to revisit how Warner died in the first place. He was swimming with his family at Playa Grande, near the town of Cahuita, on Costa Rica's Caribbean coast, when a rip current pulled him and his young daughter out into deeper water. According to Elberth Leon, head of the tourist police for Costa Rica's Atlantic region, both Warner and his daughter were caught in the current while bathing together, and as a father, he fought to save her, but the current in that stretch of coastline was too strong to overcome. People on the beach attempted to help, and first responders from the Red Cross were called, but Warner could not be revived. Costa Rica's Judicial Investigation Agency later completed an autopsy that listed the cause of death as asphyxia due to submersion. His daughter survived. He was 54 years old. For most of his adult life, Warner was one of the more private figures to come out of a hugely public show. He built his career and his reputation on Theo Huxtable, the lovable, occasionally clueless son on The Cosby Show, a role he began playing at just 13 years old when the series premiered in 1984 and continued through its run into 1992. It made him a household name in the 1980s and followed him for the rest of his life, but he never let it define the rest of his career. He went on to headline the UPN sitcom Malcolm and Eddie, played A.J. Austin on Fox's The Resident, took on a recurring role as Al Cowlings in The People v. O.J. Simpson, American Crime Story, and voiced the producer on PBS Kids, The Magic School Bus, which he also executive produced. He was also a working musician, fronting the jazz-funk spoken-word band Miles Long, and in 2015, he won a Grammy for his contribution to Robert Glasper's Black Radio 2, followed by a Grammy nomination in 2023 for his spoken-word poetry album, Hiding in Plain View. In the months before his death, he shifted into podcasting, co-hosting Not All Hood with Candace Kelly, a show focused on the range of lived experience within Black America. His final episode aired just 2 days before he died. Behind all of that, according to profiles published after his death, was his mother. Pamela Warner managed her son's career for decades and gave him his name, pairing civil rights leader Malcolm X with jazz pianist Ahmad Jamal. That relationship, manager and son, in addition to mother and son, is part of what makes her current role as trustee of the family's money so central to this new legal fight. She wasn't simply a parent looped into estate matters after his death. She had functioned as a business partner and gatekeeper for his finances for years before it. But the star kept his wife and child's identity private while he was alive. He never released their names publicly, and in 2019 he explained on Instagram why he'd chosen not to show his daughter's face online. That instinct for privacy is part of what makes this new filing so jarring. It's pulling back a curtain Warner spent years keeping closed, revealing not just his wife's name and their marriage timeline, but the specific financial terms he privately agreed to as her husband. According to the complaint, the roots of this dispute go back to before the wedding itself. Warner and his wife married on May 23, 2022, and signed a prenuptial agreement on May 15th of that year. That's 8 days between signature and ceremony, a detail that matters in family law, since courts often scrutinize how much time passed between the signing of a prenup and the wedding to determine whether both sides entered the agreement without pressure. Tenisha Warner alleges in the suit that she and Malcolm-Jamal Warner, who shared a 9-year-old daughter, married on that date and signed the premarital agreement 8 days prior. The agreement itself reads less like a typical prenup, the kind designed to protect one spouse's assets in case of divorce, and more like a set of ongoing financial commitments Warner made to his wife throughout the marriage. That distinction matters because it's the entire basis of her case. She isn't arguing over what happens to property in a split. She's arguing that specific dollar amount promises were written into the contract and never paid out while he was alive. Tenisha Warner alleges that her late husband agreed to purchase and maintain a term life insurance policy on his life in the amount of $1 million, with her named as the sole beneficiary, but she alleges he never purchased the life insurance policy, either for himself or as a separate policy naming her. That single unmet obligation accounts for the largest chunk of what she's now seeking. The rest of the alleged debt breaks down into smaller, recurring obligations that Warner is said to have agreed to, and then, according to the lawsuit, simply didn't follow through on. The complaint states that he agreed to pay his wife $16,000 a year on their wedding anniversary, create and fund a retirement account in her name, and pay her a salary of $5,000 per month for serving as his chief of staff, but failed to fulfill any of those commitments. That chief of staff title is worth pausing on. It suggests Tenisha wasn't simply a spouse in the traditional sense. The agreement appears to have formalized work she was doing for him, managing whatever needed managing in his professional or personal life, and set a poor, specific salary for it. Whether that work happened day to day isn't detailed in the available court reporting, but the contract language treated her role as compensable labor, distinct from marriage itself. Court reporting has broken that figure down piece by piece. $1 million tied to the unpurchased life insurance policy, roughly $50,542.46 in accumulated anniversary payments, $30,500 for the unfunded Roth IRA, and $195,000 in unpaid monthly salary for her role as chief of staff. What stands out here isn't just the dollar figure, it's the language the complaint uses to frame her side of the deal. Plaintiff performed all obligations required of her under the agreement, including entering into and remaining in the marriage until the decedent's death, the complaint reads. The decedent died without having satisfied his obligations under the agreement, and no person or entity has paid. Provided the sums due to plaintiff under the agreement. It's a pointed line. She's essentially arguing she held up every part of her end, staying married to him until the day he died, while he left his financial promises unfulfilled. So, why is Pamela Warner the one being sued, rather than her son's estate directly? The answer comes down to how the family structured its money decades before any of this dispute existed. Pamela Warner has been the successor trustee of the Warner Family Trust since October 7, 1996, meaning she has controlled that trust's assets and distributions for roughly 3 decades, long before Malcolm-Jamal Warner ever married Tenisha. The trust predates the marriage, predates the prenup, and predates the daughter the couple shared. Tenisha's legal team appears to be making a calculated argument about where the money actually sits. She believes Malcolm's estate does not have enough assets on its own to cover the alleged debt, so she's asking the court to allow her to recover the money from the family trust instead. In plain terms, her position is that his personal estate can't pay what he owed her, so she needs access to the trust his mother controls. That's a materially different fight than an ordinary probate dispute. It puts Pamela Warner not as an accused wrongdoer, but as the gatekeeper of funds Tenisha argues should legally flow to her, directly in the crosshairs of the case. The complaint doesn't stop at asking for money. Tenisha is also seeking interest, attorney's fees, and an order barring Pamela from distributing any money or property from the trust while the case plays out. That request for an injunction is significant. It signals her attorneys are concerned the trust's assets could be distributed to other beneficiaries or otherwise moved while litigation drags on, which would make any eventual judgment in her favor much harder to actually collect. Courts don't always grant these freezes, but requesting one this early tells you the plaintiff side sees a real risk of the money becoming unreachable. There's also a broader financial picture that helps explain why this case exists at all. Reports citing court documents obtained by Us Weekly say Warner earned roughly $680,000 a year and was worth around $3.4 million at the time of his death. Those numbers put the alleged shortfall in context. A $3.4 million net worth sounds substantial, but once you factor in whatever debts, taxes, and other obligations an estate typically carries after someone's death, there's a real possibility that liquid, that and go, distributable assets fall well short of $1.2 million once probate runs its course. That's presumably why Tenisha's team is reaching past the estate and toward the trust instead, arguing that if the estate can't pay, someone still has to. The daughter at the center of these filings deserves a mention too, mostly for what she represents rather than what's being claimed on her behalf. She was the same child pulled into the current alongside her father in Costa Rica, the one he was trying to save when he drowned. Warner spent years shielding her identity, from public view, declining even to post photos showing her face. This lawsuit is now the primary public record confirming basic facts about his home life, including his wife's name and the timeline of their marriage that he chose never to share while he was working. As for how this case likely proceeds from here, Georgia probate and trust litigation involving